Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. The MLA for Hay River South is asking the Northwest Territories government what it's doing for those affected by the wildfires. This comes after several homes south of Hay River were burned down and homeowners are waiting for replacements. Luke Carroll reports.
At the Legislative Assembly on Tuesday, Rocky Simpson described the terrifying escape many of his Hay River constituents experienced during the evacuation in August.
Day turned into night quickly as smoke blackened the sky and made visibility non-existent. Drivers were unable to see as they headed directly into the path of the fire and had to drive with their vehicle door open as they tried to find the center line to confirm they were still on the road and not in the ditch.
He says many in that situation were just focused on safety and went to the first accommodations they could find. But many of those people are now stuck with the cost of their evacuation. He asked the ministers to consider the terror that these constituents experienced and to consider those who were ineligible for any financial compensation. Simpson asked what was being done for those who lost their homes due to the wildfires. Shane Thompson, the Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs, says there will be private accommodations available until January. This includes accommodations in Peace River through the Red Cross.
Unfortunately, these people that were impacted by the fires, their accommodations, we're relooking at it in January. But as we work on it, might be extended until we get them actually back into their home or a replacement home as we work through that process. So right now we got it in January, and then we will as we move forward, we'll be looking at each individual case by case. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Simpson says he's happy that those needing accommodations will be covered until at least January. But as he said in his opening statement, he wishes the government was doing more for people financially. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The Yukon legislature resumes tomorrow. It's the second sitting for Ranj Pillay as premier. In the last sitting, the minority Liberal government passed a budget with the support of the NDP. Meanwhile, the Yukon party is clamoring for an election. So, what can we expect for the fall sitting? The CBC's Chris Windeyer is covering this session. He joins me now with more. So Chris, there is one issue that's really dominating right now in the Yukon. Tell us about that.
Well, no surprise, Megan, it is the cost of living. People all over the country, of course, are feeling it. But here in Whitehorse, the inflation rate is a Canada worst 5.2% at last count. The opposition Yukon party says the governing Liberals are not doing enough about that. Premier Ranj Pillay says his government is already working on cost of living issues. Here's what he told reporters on Friday.
Rising inflation and a higher cost of living are global challenges affecting people across Canada and the Yukon. So in the 23-24 budget, the government introduced programs to make life more affordable for Yukoners. These measures complement existing initiatives like the Universal Childcare Program and the Yukon Dental Program, which provide affordable childcare and dental care for Yukoners without dental insurance.
Now, housing costs are an issue across the country. So how does the housing situation in the Yukon intersect with the cost of living, Chris?
Well, it's complicated, again, of course. There is a chronic shortage of rental units. The vacancy rate is below 2%. The NDP has demanded, as part of its deal to keep the Liberals in power, a rent cap, a cap on rent increases. But mortgage rates have since skyrocketed because of rising interest rates. Homeowners who own units that they rent out as a result are kind of getting squeezed by those two factors. Yukon Party leader Curry Dixon says that is pushing people out of the business of being landlords.
We have seen since the confidence and supply agreement was signed, a number of landlords pull their units out of the rental market, and so those are all concerning trends. We hope to see a plan to reverse that, but ultimately, what we think we need to do, we need to get land out. We need to create an environment where we have people wanting to become landlords, not scaring them off.
There's lots of construction happening in Whitehorse right now. You can see it all over the city. Some of it is social housing. Most of it is condos, but it's not enough to meet demand.
And the housing shortage is affecting rural Yukon as well, Chris. It has an impact on health care. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, rural Yukon has in recent months seen a wave of temporary clinic closures at nursing stations, as well as the regional hospitals. Dawson City and Watson Lake have been going without ambulance service outside of business hours. And the government says part of this is because of a global shortage of healthcare workers. NDP leader Kate White says that shortage is also in part because of the housing shortage in the community.
Right now, the reality is people are looking for places to live, and rural Yukon is especially hurting. So because there's not housing in rural Yukon, because there's not building lots, we have problems, for example, getting teachers or getting healthcare workers. And so it's this big cycle that continues. And so really we want to know what the next plans are.
Finally, how can we expect this sitting to unfold?
Well, you're going to see a fall economic statement from the Liberals, sort of a mini budget to sort of set up the next half of the fiscal year. There will also be, of course, bills from the government on some of the issues we have just discussed. We don't have any details on that yet. We won't see those bills until they're actually tabled in the House. We've also seen the Yukon Party, as you mentioned off the top, Megan, sort of agitating for an election. Curry Dixon says that is because Ranj Pillay has yet to face the voters as the leader of the Liberal Party. That is true. However, the Yukon Party also sees a political advantage to having an election right now. Now, the confidence and supply agreement, that is the deal between the Liberals and the NDP that keeps the Liberals in power, that technically runs until 2025. However, NDP leader Kay White hasn't really ruled out the option of walking away if she doesn't see what she wants from the Liberals this term.
Certainly a session to keep an eye on, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan.
The Integrity Commissioner of the NWT legislature says Katrina Knockleby violated the MLA's code of conduct. David Philip Jones says the violation happened when she returned to Yellowknife during the evacuation order. The investigation was launched following 2 complaints after it was reported Knockleby entered Yellowknife to volunteer as an advisor for Ernest Betsina. He was the incoming chief of DETA at the time. Knockleby, the MLA for Great Slave, previously told CBC she believes she re-entered legally. Jones says Knockleby breached the code of conduct. He recommends a reprimand and a fine. Knockleby says she'll take time to digest the commissioner's report before speaking to the media.
I held Frank as a baby. I know his mother, Laura, and I know his father, Asak, really. I grew up with them. I was speaking to his mom today. Frank was such a lovable person, she says, always laughing, having a good time. He loved the Gwich'in language. He loved his family. He was harmless. Frank would never hurt anyone. Mr. Speaker, for him to go missing without any reason doesn't make no sense. He's loved by his mom. He would never turn his back on his family. Someone knows something what happened to Frank. When I asked Frank's mother if there was something she wanted me to say on her behalf, she said, "Please bring my baby home. I want answers. Please help me bring him home."
That was Nunavut MLA Jackie Jacobson renewing calls for help finding Frank Grubin. Grubin has been missing for 5 months. He was last seen in Fort Smith. The family has criticized police efforts trying to find him. Our CMPs say they have exhausted all their leads. They say they've repeatedly called for information from the public, and they continue investigating. Well-known northern broadcaster and elder Roy Goose has died. Goose worked at CBC North in Nunavut for decades. He was known for his sense of humor and his knowledge of Inuvialuit language and culture. His friend, Dennis Allen, says Roy was like a walking encyclopedia, smart as a whip. Here's Allen remembering Roy Goose while speaking with the CBC's Jared Monkman.
I remember just being with him either on hunting trip or even just sitting around having coffee and talking or jamming because we played a lot of music together. And all of a sudden he would just come up with a tidbit of information right out of the blue, and it would just it would just kind of stop you in your tracks. It's like, where do you know that from, Roy? And he'll say he either read it or he experienced it, because he had a really exciting life too. Because when he came out of high school, he joined the military, and he also worked on the railroad, and he was a broadcaster, a journalist, a photographer. He was an ambassador. He worked in a lot of different capacities that brought him all over the north, and he met all kinds of interesting people. And so, sitting with him was never a boring moment.
Construction is underway on Inuvic's second fiber optic line, a backup for the Mackenzie Valley line. It'll connect Dawson City in the Yukon to Inuvik in the NWT. The CBC's Des Loreen has more.
The 800-kilometer line is already in its third season of construction. Conduit piping has been laid alongside the Dempster Highway. Fiber optic cable will soon be laid inside that piping, underground and strung through towers. 405 kilometers of cable have been laid, and 780 kilometers of conduit have already been put down on the Dempster. The new line is a failsafe to retain internet stability in the region. Inuvik experienced an internet outage earlier this summer, cut off for almost a month due to wildfire damage to the Mackenzie Valley fiber line. This line is expected to complete in 2025. Des Loreen, CBC News, Inuvik.
3 new possible locations for a fuel tank farm in Arvit were presented to residents last week. The Nunavut government held a public meeting and a radio talk show to talk about the issue. The project was originally supposed to be built on Arvit's shoreline. That plan was cancelled after the community raised concerns. There was worry about potential harm to the environment and possible impact to nearby homes. None of the new locations for the proposed project are near the shoreline. Another meeting will be held in December. Organizers say last week's Givarluk trade show in Rankin Inlet was a success. The theme was celebrating women in business. There were panels focused on women in leadership, the next generation, and women in the arts. Tracy Tungaluk is an arts advisor for the government of Nunavut. She says all the women who spoke were inspiring, but one in particular stood out.
They gave more hope. And when I listened to Nikki Kumaksiutiksa, she is the founder of Tungasiwit Inc. What she does in her business and what she does with that organization is amazing. I couldn't help but cry because she did so much for better lives of Inuit in Winnipeg.
The trade show included a market. There were over 50 booths, and artists sold over $20,000 worth of art.
Norman Wells is saving energy and money in its arena with new LED lighting.
We want to give the people in the community that use the arena the best experience that they can have. The application process was flawless, and I would encourage other communities to look into this fund with Arctic Energy Alliance.
The Arctic Energy Alliance has free advice and rebates to help you switch and save. Talk to us today.
Things are too good, just scared that things will be taken away.
Think of the education they will receive.
You're going to see things you never forget.
There is no way that we are going to give up when we are threatened with cultural genocide.
Sometimes it's the beautiful things that hurt the most to remember.
You promise me that you won't look back. You are our tomorrow.
Keeping secrets, are you?
No, sir.
It's like any man. On the run.
Whatever you're gonna do, you need to do it now.
Hang on, guys. I'm sure you'll get some action, promise?
We were failed by history.
It's really important that we own our stories.
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians.
These are acts of desperation.
Connecting politics to people.
Some people have lost everything.
Join me for Rosemary Barton Live.
Members of Parliament have elected a new Speaker of the House of Commons, Quebec Liberal MP Greg Fergus. His first challenge is helping Parliament restore its reputation after an embarrassing incident last month. The CBC's Ashley Burke has more.
A rare election in the middle of a parliamentary session.
Her Excellency, the Governor-General, has seen fit to authorize this chamber to proceed
with voting on a new Speaker of the House of Commons after the last one resigned.
I reiterate my profound regret for my error.
Anthony Rota stepped down last week after an incident during the Ukrainian president's visit. Rota invited and honored 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka. It later came to light Hunka served in a Nazi unit during the Second World War. Russia then used that as propaganda against Ukraine.
The events of September 22nd were unfortunate, embarrassing, and hurtful.
7 MPs from different parties ran to replace Rota, pitching their plans to restore Parliament's reputation.
Mr. Speaker, I will invite Jewish community leaders from across the country, as well as veterans groups who were also affected by what happened this past Friday, to this place to apologize.
The tragedy that unfolded in this place could have been avoided if we'd followed our rules.
Those rules restrict who the Speaker can recognize in Parliament when the House is sitting, to people like heads of state or award winners in their field. Hunka did not meet the guidelines, but Rota recognized him anyways when the House wasn't sitting.
What brought us here today requires a response. Words matter. Symbols matter. This I know. And as your Speaker, I will restore quickly the honor, bring back the honor to this chamber.
Greg Fergus.
After a secret ballot vote, Liberal MP Greg Fergus landed the job and vowed to apply the rules fairly and consistently.
Mr. Speaker, today you are the first Black Canadian to become Speaker of this House.
There's going to be kids who maybe have come here and not seen themselves reflected on the walls. And that's going to change now. That's very powerful.
More than 30 years ago, Fergus sat at the foot of the Speaker's chair as a parliamentary page. And now he'll be the one sitting in that chair. And his first task is to turn the page on this incident that's embarrassed the House. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives has been ousted from his post. Republican Kevin McCarthy was voted out of the office this afternoon.
The yeas are 216. The nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
McCarthy held the job for just 10 months before being removed in a historic vote. It's the first time in U.S. history that a motion to remove a Speaker of the House has succeeded. His dismissal came as the result of a challenge from hard-right Republicans led by Florida Representative Matt Gaetz. Tensions between the two men have been building for months. The motion was supported by Democrats who never felt McCarthy was fit for the office. There are new questions about the rift between Canada and India. The Prime Minister says relations are going through what he describes as an extremely challenging time. Justin Trudeau also said the federal government isn't looking to escalate a diplomatic conflict. That came as a newspaper report said India wants dozens of Canadian diplomats out of the country. Evan Dyer has the latest.
Canada's foreign minister declined to confirm the reports from India that the Modi government wants more than 40 diplomats to leave.
We will continue to engage privately because we think that diplomatic conversations are best when they remain private.
But Jolie left little doubt that Canada is concerned about its presence in India.
More than ever, it's important that diplomats be on the ground. And that's why we believe in the importance of having a strong diplomatic footprint in India. That being said, we are in ongoing conversations with the Indian government.
2 weeks ago, New Delhi started to warn it might demand parity in diplomatic representation. In other words, lowering the number of Canadian diplomats in India to match the number of Indian diplomats in Canada.
The reason is that we have seen Canadian diplomatic interference in our internal affairs.
This is a factor that is being taken into account for seeking parity in strength and ranking.
India says Canada has 62 diplomats. They're spread between the main High Commission in New Delhi and 4 consulates in Mumbai, Chandigarh, Calcutta, and Bengaluru. India claims it has only 21 diplomats in Canada, so this would mean Canada has to make a 2/3 reduction.
This is the heaviest gun that the Indians could use, short of breaking of diplomatic relations itself.
This former ambassador says India's latest escalation is particularly dramatic.
I can't think of another incident over the last 40 or 50 years where something like this has happened.
The cuts will make it hard to carry on business as usual, says this former diplomat, affecting the processing of visas and possibly also trade.
To do it on the scale that is being reported certainly would be a significant drag on Canada's diplomatic operations across India.
The escalation, he says, may be a sign that the dispute is hurting India more than it would like to admit.
We are seeing public discussion about whether the nature of those allegations changes how India is viewed internationally. So I think the stakes are also high for the Modi government.
India's claim to have only 21 diplomats in Canada is curious, given that Canada has 60 Indian representatives registered with Global Affairs. But India gets to choose what number of Canadian representatives to allow, say the former diplomats, and Canada will have no choice but to comply. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
It appears there may be a major policy shift underway at the Vatican. In a letter to a group of cardinals, Pope Francis is signaling that Roman Catholic priests may be allowed to bless same-sex marriages. The strongly conservative cardinals wanted the Pope to reaffirm church doctrine that calls same-sex relationships sinful. The letter was released by the Vatican on the eve of a major policy assembly taking place this month. Megan Williams has that story.
The Vatican just released this letter yesterday, but in that letter in July that he wrote to these cardinals, he said that he thinks it's best to leave the discretion of whether or not a same-sex couple gets blessed up to individual priests. He said that there are lots of situations within the Catholic Church where people aren't leading the ideal life by Catholic Church standards, but nonetheless, it's not the job of priests to deny, reject, expel from the church because everybody isn't leading this perfect life. Now, this is going to rankle a lot of the hardcore conservatives within the Catholic Church. Indeed, this group of 5 cardinals wrote Pope Francis back and said, can you please just answer yes or no to these 5 questions? The Pope ignored that letter, or has until now. But it's interesting that he released this letter, or the Vatican released this letter, just before this huge Catholic Synod summit on the future of the Catholic Church is set to begin tomorrow in Rome. That is a gathering of about 450 people, cardinals, bishops, lay Catholics. Women are included with voting rights for the first time ever. And on the agenda of that meeting will be women's ordination or the possibility of them becoming deacons, but also LGBTQ inclusion. So the fact that the Vatican released the Pope's response to this group of cardinals who really oppose LGBTQ inclusion is a sign of the direction he would like that church listening session or conference that's going to last about a month to go in. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
In Manitoba, voters are casting ballots in today's provincial election. Progressive Conservative leader Heather Stephenson is looking for a 3rd straight win for the party. It would make her the first woman elected premier in a Manitoba general election. She became premier in 2021 after Brian Pallister retired. If the NDP are the victors, leader Wab Kinew will become the first First Nations premier in Canadian history. Dougald Lamont is leading the Liberals in this election. About 100,000 Manitobans have already cast ballots in advance polling. That broke the 2019 record. that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/north. We leave you with a performance from the Inukshuk drum dancers. They performed in Iqaluit on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation this past weekend. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
Driving impaired destroys lives. A message from Mad Canada.
What Canadian creature is often a villain in fairy tales? Likes to talk to its family a lot. Hunts in large packs for big animals. And is a close cousin to dogs. If you guessed the wolf, you're right. These mighty hunters are quite shy of people and fill an important role in nature. To learn more about wolves, visit our website at hww.ca.
They knew love. What you taught them was an education in unrelenting cruelty.
We were always a part of something bigger. We were always a part of the light.
Just remain calm. Grab the head.
You grab the head. Have you ever dealt with something like this before?
No.
It's on me now. Animal Control. Watch all episodes now.
I was homeschooled as a child. You can only be as smart as your mom. That's it.
Gross.
Okay, cool.
I love it.
Picture a pager, a cell phone, and an email machine all in one thing.
We call it Pocket Link.
You need a better name.